still very firmly in the camp that AI is not going to replace all of us. We've talked enough about humans and relationships and how important they are to marketers and to businesses. But I think marketers who know AI will replace marketers who refuse to use AI.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this next episode of How I Work. I'm super excited to have Steph Alice with me today. Thanks for being here, Steph.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about Steph. So, Steph is the current Director of Demand Generation for Uponor North America, based in Apple Valley, Minnesota. She's spent most of her career in the B2B manufacturing space in the last 7 years, leading integrating marketing teams focused on content marketing and social media. Super excited to have this conversation. I love starting these conversations off by asking my guests to tell the audience a bit about themselves. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a bit about when you first got interested in marketing, what your career path has looked like, where else you've worked before Uponor, and what you're kind of currently doing in your role today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it started really young for me. Funny enough, my room was plastered in Absolute ads when I was a teenager. I swear I was not drinking vodka at the time, but
Sure.
I promise, not yet at least. So I was really into photography as early as I can remember, and there was just something about the simplicity and creativity of that medium that I just thought was so cool. And I loved writing equally, frankly. So I ended up studying English Lit at the University of Michigan, and I graduated right as Michigan was one of the first states, frankly, to get kind of close to the Great Recession. So there was an opportunity with a manufacturing company that I had interned with during college out here in Minnesota. I had one friend and he was like, "You'll love the music scene in the Twin Cities." And he was not wrong. I still do, frankly. So I headed out to Minnesota with that manufacturing company. I managed to hold on to the job throughout the Great Recession, which was a win at that point. And then once we really came out of that, I was ready to chase my marketing dreams. So I started with a small manufacturing company. We sold hobby farm products. I have wanted chickens ever since that job, and I finally got them this year. So thanks, Miller Manufacturing, for my obsession with my chickens. They're fantastic. Everyone should get some. And from there, I really branched out to the CPG space. I worked at a natural food startup for just shy of 2 years, and it is where I cut my marketing teeth. I was incredibly lucky to work for a VP of marketing that let me fail really fast and pivot and figure out what worked. So I took that back to the manufacturing space at Daikin Applied first. These are really innovative companies in their own right, but not necessarily as prepared to dive into the digital space. So I took what I'd learned in CPG and then really brought it to these more traditional spaces. And then 4.5 years ago, I came to Uponor and have really had a unique opportunity to build this function and the team from the ground up. So now we're really out there proving that we're a revenue generating marketing org and can make some cool stuff happen in this space.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And I love this, what you said, like we're proving that we're a revenue generating marketing department within the organization. You're not just seen as some cost center that everybody's looking at like, all right, this is the first thing we need to cut. And I think that's just outstanding. So, Uponor is a pretty big global company based in Finland. I think I read you have 4,000 employees, 26 different countries. Can you talk a little bit about like the benefits or challenges of like working for this global company, and particularly in the marketing function?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, especially in the last couple of years, we've built stronger relationships with our colleagues in Finland and Germany. We hold really regular touch bases, and we've learned best practices from one another. They try things, we can learn from that. There's differences in product, differences slightly in customer bases, but at the end of the day, we're selling super similar products to super similar customers. And so frankly, it was a miss for a long time that we weren't learning more from one another. So that's definitely the upside. it's not all rainbows though, right? I mean, the bigger your team gets and the more spread out they become, the harder decisions are to be made too. There
Sure.
needs to be a lot of alignment globally, to really push some of those changes through. And digital marketing moves fast. And so we need to be able to make some of those decisions really quickly. So I would say that's one of our challenges. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I do think it's really cool to like be talking to you about like the kind of global perspective. I think sometimes in the US we think we got it all, like we're advanced, like, hey, like this is where Google's headquarters is. We should know more about this than anybody else, right? And I don't necessarily think that's always true. So it is cool that you guys are kind of learning from one another. You know, one of the things that I think, talking about learning, that I know you've been responsible for is kind of hiring and firing agency partners. And I'm sure that you here in the US have your set of partners. In Finland and other places, maybe they have a different set of partners. So I'd be curious to hear what you've learned along the way about choosing the right partner. What are some of the red flags that you've experienced that other kind of in-house marketing leaders should be paying attention to if they see with their current partner, or what they should be trying to avoid?
Yeah, you'll hear me talk a lot about people, which is ironic given that
Mm,
I work mostly remote and stare at a computer all day. But um, the agency has to be an extension of your team. And
yeah.
when you're interviewing agencies, they're going to send their best people to you. They are really going to put on their best show. And so it's really up to you as the client to say, okay, who in this room is actually going to be on our team? Let me get to know
Mm,
them. Let me have those conversations with the people that are going to be managing our account every day. Because those are
right.
the relationships, frankly, that are the most important with your agency partner. um, and we've seen that go both ways. There's been a lot of turnover in some agencies that we've had, and it's made for really unstable relationships. And then there are other agency partners like Garion that has really stayed on top of those communications, and been that extension of our team that we really appreciate and makes the biggest impact. Um, I would also say that there's complacency sometimes in long-term relationships, with agencies and clients, and you can't be afraid to call that out. I mean, yes, we're Midwesterners, but we need to figure out that directness and really be upfront about what's happening client side. And I'd expect that from the agency as well. I think it's just about that openness and transparency to figure out how we all work best together.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit on like two of my favorite topics. One, relationships, right? And it's funny, we're in like this digital marketing space, and like everybody has the same tools. Like agency A is using Google Ads, agency B is using, like, it's not about the tools in the end. It is really about the people,
Yep.
the communication, the relationships. And then the second thing is radical candor, right? Which we preach, of course, which is like this idea that if you care really deeply about something, you're willing to have like divergent thinking and willing to like share that and feel like that you have the psychological safety to do that. And that needs to go both ways, right? It's not just clients like telling agencies, hey, I got some candor for you. It's also agencies being able to say, like, hey, if you really want to achieve these things, I think we got to like shift our focus into like these areas. So anyway, I love that you're talking about relationships and radical candor. Um, so like shifting gears a little bit, 2023, it's been a crazy year. Of course, we're out of the pandemic, but there's still like economic uncertainty. We got wars raging on in Ukraine, the Israel Hamas thing that's happening. It's like horrific, dysfunction within government, not just in the US, but other parts of the world. So all of this has like a ton of implications for businesses and for marketers. So I'm curious from your perspective, especially working in like a global company, in this unstable context in which we're living, like what advice would you have for marketers? Like what should we be thinking about or paying attention to in like all the chaos?
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, there's no way to answer that question without being just human first. Like, I have
Yeah.
had colleagues that I'm working with in Ukraine, and watching
Wow.
what is happening to Palestinians is just truly devastating.
Mm.
But we do have to turn and think about it as marketers and think about how our content is showing up on these platforms too.
Yeah.
Um, we live and breathe in TikTok, in Instagram, in PR spaces. And so
Yeah.
it's really balancing, A, should we be promoting our products right now? I think that's a super
Yeah.
valid question in any time of civil unrest. There have absolutely been times where we've gone to our teams and say, we need to pause everything. Everything needs to
Yeah.
stop. And I think those are important conversations that more businesses need to be having.
Mm.
But also, the world is always under unrest in some way. And so we have to persevere as marketers and think about how we can ethically move forward and think about our customers that are still in the field too. I mean, at the end of the day, we're working for tradespeople. Our products don't exist without really highly skilled tradespeople in the field using our products day in and day out. And they still
Mhm.
need products that are high quality, available, and making their jobs easier and more productive. And so at the end of the day, I think we really need to keep that customer hat on and think about what's most important to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Like, economies don't come to a screeching halt. There's still buildings being built and, plumbing that needs to get installed.
Yes,
And so there's a truth to that, but you don't want to come off as tone deaf either,
absolutely.
right? You don't want to just be showing up, with roses and rainbows in spaces that maybe don't merit that. So I love those call outs that you're making there for sure. So the topic that everybody talks about, my question for you is about AI. So, what's your take on AI and the marketing function, and maybe how are you approaching AI even at Uponor?
I fall very firmly in the camp that AI is not going to replace all of us. We've talked enough about humans and relationships and how important they are to marketers and to businesses. But I think marketers who know AI will replace marketers who refuse to use AI. I think that's where I fall. I
I
think it
love.
can be an efficiency tool. I think it can be a brain starting tool. I saw a really interesting article that it was like, do everything opposite that AI tells you to do, and then you're going to have a great piece. I thought that was incredibly interesting content advice. So I think it's knowing these tools, put them put them in your martech stack, right? Like, you need to know how to use it, you need to know how to use it effectively, but also know when not to use it and when to think more about why you're doing what you're doing, where it would go, and again, think about the people on the other side of this conversation. um, we do have a AI Teams chat that a handful of cross-functional folks are in. We share webinars that we've been a part of, interesting articles we found, ways that we've used it in interesting ways. Like, one of my team members plugged in a par.html email template and said, hey, can you make
Okay.
this but make it better? And sure enough, it pushed out usable HTML. Have we implemented it? No, but it was an interesting test to see kind of where those capabilities lie.
Yeah, and just how those things are evolving. I love what you said, which was that marketers won't be replaced by AI, but marketers that don't use AI will be replaced by marketers who do. And like, that's gold right there. That's I'm using that on LinkedIn. Um, so anyway, yeah, I think it's awesome. At Agurian, we've kind of got two buckets, right? We've got our kind of teams that are a team that's focused on just kind of tool utilization and how can we become more efficient and more effective and use these tools appropriately, with the consent of our clients and all of those things. And then we have kind of another group of people that's a little bit more kind of reaching 5 years into their crystal ball and saying like, well, what does this actually mean for an agency like ours? What does it mean for clients of ours? And that's a little bit more kind of theoretical and far reaching, but I do think it's helpful to try to understand where things are going, because I see like one of the jobs of our agency is to help clients understand like how they should even be approaching it and how they should be using it, kind of consultatively. If we can understand that, we should be able to relay that and provide recommendations and insights to our clients. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, AI is it's not going away. So we gotta figure out how to use it.
Just watch out for those deep fakes.
Yeah, right. Well, thankfully nobody's done that for me yet. I'm not my podcast isn't that big yet, but who knows?
Just wait.
Uh, yeah, right. There we go. Um, so the way that I always love to kind of end these interviews, start by asking your story, and I love your story, and end with like, okay, you've been doing this for a while. You're super smart. So like, who is it that you turn to for thought leadership? Are there books you're reading, podcasts, but yes, besides mine, that command your attention? Like, what is it that is kind of getting the wheels turning for you today?
I will admit that given how crazy 2023 has been, a lot of my free reading and podcast time is very much leisure.
Yeah.
Everyone should listen to the Handsome Pod. It brings the levity that I need in a day. But
Okay.
I love TikTok. Let's be honest. There is a radical candor, if you will, on that platform. And it knows your algorithm so well that there are tips and tricks and tools that I share with my team that I find on my TikTok feed all the time. Um,
Wow.
I read Drop the Ball by Tiffany Dufu when I was a new mom. And that's still one of my favorite books, and one that I reference
Okay.
a lot in conversations of how do you balance it all, right? I have two young kids. I have a big job, and I've got a family that I love to spend time with. And so it's really about prioritizing how to get that all
Mm-hmm.
done, and that it's
Yeah.
okay to drop the ball in some of these spaces once you prioritize.
Amen.
There's also local sources. I mean, Eric Hansen is a friend of Uponor and a friend
Yeah.
of mine. I love Social Media Breakfast. That might be a plug. I will be on the panel at Social Media Breakfast next month, but I've been going to those
Go.
for 10 years, and the case studies that they bring and the sense of community that it brings is just really special.
Yeah. Man, I have memories of Social Media Breakfast when it was like they were hosting it above Stanley's, that bar in Northeast. Michael Rovatine. I mean, it was like maybe 30 of us or something.
Yep.
And it's just like been impressive how they've been able to just keep it going. And I know there were some kind of up and down years, but it seems like it's really like coming back. And maybe it's because they're getting awesome people like you to sit on panels and talk about interesting things. So thank you for being committed to the community locally here
Absolutely.
in the Twin Cities. And thanks for some of those tips. Well, cool. Well, that's it. That's all the time we have for today. I've really appreciated it. This has been a fun conversation. So thanks for being with me today, Steph.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh.